A special guest today, Sifu Singh. He's come on the show today to talk about a little bit about his life, the things that he's doing. He's also one of my speakers for the TEDx event here in San Luis Obispo, April 14th. So we're just gonna, pick his brain, ask a few questions, see how he's gotten to where he's gotten, the things that he's doing, and trust me, he has his plate full. He's a very interesting man. So, but thanks for being on the show, Harinder.
My
And
honor to be here, man. Good to see you again.
yeah, absolutely, good to see you too as well. So, what we'll start off with, man, I really want to talk about your martial arts background. I've been watching you for a number of years on YouTube. You are phenomenal. You have a grace about you that I prize because I don't find too many guys that have that kind of skill set. I was blessed to be around a lot of high martial artists in my day, so when I see it, I know it, and you got it, man. So tell me a little bit about how you got to where you are right now.
Well, first, thank you for those kind words, man. I'm just a student of the game, and I love what I do. Martial arts gives me an opportunity to express myself honestly, and it really has been a vehicle for me, in my life to. I think for many people who are in martial arts or they choose something that challenges them, gives them an opportunity to use that art as a vehicle for self development, to finding your human potential and ultimately expressing yourself. So for me, I started martial arts when I was really young. I started in karate when I was about 7 years old, 6, 7 years old. My mom enrolled me at the University of Toronto Academy of Karate and Judo. And so that was a very philosophically driven program because my mom's an immigrant. We immigrated from India to Toronto, Canada around that time. And she was looking for somebody that was very educated, so I was looking for a professor. And Sensei Bert Konzak was an Eastern philosophy professor at the University of Toronto.
Okay, yeah,
So that's how she decided, where to put me. She didn't know the difference between, what martial art, what to do. Of course, karate, everybody knows. You watch the Karate Kid and stuff like that, you
right.
understand. But that's kind of so philosophy has always been a big part of the training and the learning. I mean, coming up, Goren no Sho, the Book of Five Rings, and Bruce Lee's Tao of Jeet Kune Do was given to me at a very early age by my senseis, and so Sensei Bert Konzak ran the whole thing, but then I trained with Sensei Harry Rosen and James Posey, who ran the local schools that I was at, and I came up under them. So I did that till I was 19, and then I moved to California. I went to UC Davis, just not too far up the road from you guys,
Okay.
and I was going to be I studied to become a computer electrical engineer. I'm from an Indian background, Indian family, so if you're not an engineer, a doctor, or lawyer, you're pretty much a loser. So you had
No, I
you
understand. No, I
you know what
understand.
I'm
I get
saying?
it.
And I think all the Asian people out there will understand what I'm saying. There was not much of a choice. It was just like, "Hey, do this." You're like, "All right, cool." So I came and I was studying, and of course, then I got a job in the early dot-com boom days, early 2000s, turn of 1998, 99, 2000s, around that time. I was interning those times, and then when I graduated was 2002 in the Silicon Valley. But the year before I graduated, I always been in martial arts, but the year before I graduated, I was at the wrong place, the wrong time. For all the Bay Area folks, do you know where Ocean Beach is?
I
Up in
do.
San
Yeah,
Francisco? You know what I'm talking about?
I
So,
do.
in Ocean Beach, there's that big hill, right? It comes all the
Right.
way down, and then down there's the elevated parking lot, and then there's a big beach, and people are there. So, I was at UC Davis, and there was a big bonfire. There's a big party towards the end of the year, and so we drove down from Davis. We were the last two cars to arrive, and people were down. So, there's a big, about a mile drop, and you come down, there's an elevated parking lot, and then you go down. Once you park there, you go a few hundred yards away. There's a bonfire, and people were there. So we were the last few cars to come, and like good, responsible college kids, what do? You had a long drive, so you pop open a couple beers, maybe a little Jack Daniels, and you're
Okay.
pre-partying
Yeah, yeah.
before the party,
Sounds
right? Right, parking lot party before the regular one,
you
and
pre-gaming.
pre-game, and so, but talk about wrong place, wrong time, and zero situational awareness. that area is there's a lot of gang activity in that area, but we didn't know that. I didn't know that, of course. None of the people I was with did either. And literally out of the darkness, much like in a movie, 25 people showed up, and they were looking for somebody. So I still remember it like yesterday. I'm standing here. To the left of me is the brand new Z06 Corvette. Okay, because my friend had just graduated the year earlier, and so he was a responsible person who gets stock options in the dot-com boom days. You go buy a sports car, right? So he had
Right, exactly.
driven it down. He was there, and there was another car next to us, and he was smoking a cigarette, and to the left of me was my roommate, and there's about 8 of us. And from the left approached these 25 guys, and you looked in their eyes. There was that hunch that told you something's up, but I didn't do anything. You didn't create space. There was zero situational awareness. I mean, one of my teachers said later, many years later, bad things happen to you when you're having a good time, and when you
That's
least
that's
when you least expect it,
absolutely true. Yes.
right?
When
So
you
and
least
zero situational awareness too, right? So, yeah, how do you not see 25 people walk up on you? Um, so their leader, you could say, he asked my friend to the right of me for a cigarette. The guy to the right of me was smoking a cigarette. And in that moment when we looked over there, right, Prince, we looked over there, they grabbed my roommate. So it was a draw ploy tactic for us to look, and it happened so quick. They grabbed my roommate, took him to the center, and they attacked us in a formation. This wasn't like a street fight I'd been in before, one on one and things of that nature that we get into, but this was like a formation, and they had a plan. And
they knew what they were doing.
they knew what they were doing. It was battlefield style, right? So they grabbed my roommate, took him into the center, started beating on him, and then the others formed a perimeter and then launched, you could say, an attack party. And it happened instantaneously. It was like boom, I snapped my fingers. That's what happened. One of the guys that was the closest to me on their side, he had just ripped off a 2x4 from a fence. It was brand new, fresh, because it still had the nails. That's what I knew. He had just ripped it off, and he had straddled it like this, so kind of like he's walking around like a crucifix, straddled it, had 2 nails. His shirt was open. He had a tattoo, and he took a swing at me. I did a block, and then that's when my life changed. So in that moment, 2 things happened. The first thing was you have that moment, boom, that goes so fast, and then I escape through the cars, and you have a thought in your mind: do I run or do I stay and help my roommate? There's an active choice that has to be made. And I decided to stay, but I did absolutely nothing heroic. It was nothing like in any movie that you see or anything like that. It basically what ended up happening was the moment I decided to stay, and it was a conscious choice, they've grabbed my roommate, they're beating on him in the center, and then there's like 10 people running and chasing after me. I'm running around cars. It was look more like a rugby match of people chasing you,
Right.
and you're juking them and you're pushing them and you're swinging at somebody. It's not like in a Bruce Lee movie where everybody surrounds you and circles you and comes one at a time. So it was nothing like that. Um, but in that moment, I experienced something that would change my life. In that moment, for the very first time, I experienced a sense of stillness and a sense of peace that I'd never experienced before in the middle of that chaos. It was this beautiful chaos that had happened. And in that moment, it was like my Matrix moment. The time slowed down. The thoughts in my mind, the ideas and identities of who you are, gone. The masks we wear, gone. The securities, the controls, the approvals, gone. And I was finally free from myself. And that was the first day that I met myself, who I truly was, outside of who I thought I was. And the next thing happened is nowadays we call it the flow state, but I
Yes,
really
that's
experienced it,
exactly
but
right.
very differently, right? Another part was I was an NCAA athlete. I played tennis. That's why I got recruited to UC Davis, and I played many other sports, competed in martial arts. And so we've kicked into that zone, that flow state in sports. And it was similar to that, but it was different because there was a life and death situation. So it was amplified on another
Right.
level. I had never experienced anything like that until that point in my life. And then I discovered the power of the flow state and what it is there. And it became my obsession. And I realized, wow, in this flow state, there's these 4 things that happen. Number one, there's no more chitter chatter of the mind. It's gone. You just become an observer. Number two, time gets displaced. So time completely slows down. Boom, you're in that matrix moment. And then it's effortless. What you're doing is effortless. You're moving around. And it was so peaceful amidst that danger and chaos. That's what I felt. and it ended up being a very rewarding experience for me. And the exact opposite is what we all deal with. The exact opposite of that is we have this chitter chatter in our head, this voices in our head that tells us what we can, what
Right.
we can't do, right? And instead of being in this moment, wholly and totally in the center of time and space, we are trapped in the ghosts of the past, or we're worried about the future, and we're living not here. And then when that's not happening, then we're so far from our center that instead of it being an effortless experience, it becomes very difficult. You have to try so hard, and then instead of becoming rewarding, it becomes exhausting.
That's right.
And so for me, that day kicked it off. My journey really began that day, you could say. I was obsessed with this flow state, this peace in the chaos. And I was like, I felt it, I've tasted it. What is this? How do you operate from this? How do you get into this? That was one piece that drove me. And the other piece was when you get assaulted like that, you get afraid. You
Right.
get very
Fear.
angry,
Yeah.
fear, and you get angry. And you feel shame that you couldn't protect I'm supposed to be this badass karateka, and I couldn't do anything, right? And so these are just voices in our head, but they drive the path we take. And so that day I swore that nothing like that would ever happen to me. And I said, I'm going to become the most dangerous person that I could become. So from anger, shame, and fear, I drove myself to find the baddest people I could on the planet to train with. Because the next year I'd graduated, got that
Right.
great job. Stock options, SiliconValley.com boom days, man. I could pay for any instructor I wanted anywhere in the world, and that's what I did. I immersed myself, and then at the same time, I was obsessed with this flow state. And so my path took me two ways. One was Jeet Kune Do, Bruce Lee's Jeet Kune Do, street fighting, and Filipino Kali, and studying that aspect of it, which led me into Wing Chun and Brazilian Jiu Jitsu and things of that nature. And the other path was going into Tai Chi and Qigong. And there's a funny story there too about searching for the death touch and ending up with the healing hand. But I went.
Absolutely. Yes, they go hand in hand.
Well, let me tell you about that. So you imagine you're so upset, right? And I'm an engineer, so I was like, okay, everybody here may have heard of the death touch. I can talk about it because I've healed from it. But then one of the things is that I was like, all right, man, I want to learn how to touch people and kill them. That was how angry I was, right? So I said, okay, how am I going to learn this? And so I got all the books I could. And when I got the books on the dim mak and the death touch, I started reading them all. And what did they all point to? They all pointed to Chinese meridian systems,
Right.
acupuncture points, and all this. I said, well, if somebody really knows this, they're not going to teach me. I was like, that's for sure. So I
Right.
said, all right. I had a bright idea that I will enroll in a Chinese medicine medical qigong program, and I will learn the healing system and then reverse engineer it and figure it out. I was like, that would probably be the only way to really figure it out. So that's what I started in, and but lo and behold, I came full circle around. You try to trick the Sifu, you try to trick the master, and he knows what's up. He lets you unravel, right? He's like, "Look at this guy, right? Look,
Right.
right?" And I look back, I talk to him, like, "It's hilarious, right?" And he's like, "Yeah," but he had to let me go through my path to unravel, you know what I mean? And you start doing the meditations, you start doing the healing process, you start doing the work, and you start to realize things don't happen to you, they happen for you. Up until that point, I was, I thought success was power, and fame, and money, and options, and importance, and status, and significance. Up until that point, I was still hiding. I lost my hair to alopecia when I was 13 years old, and I wore a wig, Prince, till I was 28 years old, hiding
Really?
from the world because, like, oh, I felt like I was ugly. And by the way, man, The Rock wasn't around when I was a kid growing up, so
So it
there was.
wasn't cool. Hey, man, I rock the baldy too, man, so,
I
you know.
know, I know, I know, but you know what I'm saying. The Rock was. I had to look at Yul Brenner, you know.
No,
but
you're
but
right.
but it was such a transformative experience because afterwards you realize, wow, that was such a divine intervention in my path to ask a question of what's more important, what really is life about, why am I really here, what's going on. And many times when we're faced with obstacles, understanding the true nature of obstacles and how they're there to serve us, for us to see what we're truly capable of, is a really profound flip of the script. So in short or long, that's kind of, and then since then I've dedicated my life to martial arts. I've learned many different systems, a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, studied Wing Chun Kung Fu, Tai Chi Chuan. I'm a master teacher of that. And of course, Bruce Lee's Jeet Kune Do. I represent the art, the legacy, and the family, and a high performance coach. And what I realized was that effective interactions and accurate perceptive awareness are the two keys to success in anything we do.
Right.
And how can I provide those lessons for not just in martial arts, but my work with military government agencies, over 200 of them that I've had a chance to work with, to Silicon Valley executives and business owners and professional athletes. We all deal with the same blocks that get in the way of what our true potential is in an interaction with people, places, and things. And how do we decode it? And that's kind of been the path I've been on.
Man, that's an amazing kind of timeline that you're talking about, man. And your story isn't abnormal, but it's just you have a lot of pieces to that puzzle. Especially when you talk about young men just being angry, and
Mm,
sometimes you're angry and you don't even know why you're angry, but you had enough awareness to kind of figure out and pinpoint where it was that, hey, I need to figure this part of my life out because this is taking me down a very dark path in which you probably didn't understand at the time. How-
No, no, I can't. I didn't do shit. Sorry. It was my teachers, that pointed me the right way, and I'm blessed to have great teachers. I just looked for information and looked for guides and mentors, and luckily they were able to help guide me to discover uh, who I really am and what I love to do.
Right, right. No, no, no. I completely understand. I tell my story, and when I tell my story, I tell people that I didn't do it either, and I've had a lot of great men along the way. Side note is I don't see a lot of that anymore these
Mm,
days. That mentorship or that
mm,
older men taking these young men aside and saying, "Hey, there's
yeah.
a better way of doing that." But I had that. My real father wasn't in my life. So my mom, single mom,
Mm,
she has three boys. We're trying to figure it out. I'm the oldest.
mm,
And so being the oldest boy at that, I have my younger brothers looking up to me, and I'm trying to figure it out as a teen. And as we all do, you go out there and you do some wild stuff, some wild, crazy stuff.
mm, mm.
And I had certain very strong men along the way that kind of pulled me aside and said, "Hey, you might want to think, you might want to rethink that. You might
Yeah,
want to do that a little bit differently." And if it wasn't for that, I don't know where I would be,
for
to be
sure.
honest with you. Yeah,
For sure. Well, let me tell you something. My dad wasn't around either, and so my mom raised 3 boys, and I was the oldest also. So I totally understand what you're saying.
yeah. It's by the grace of God, to be honest with you, man. Because I really, we're originally from Chicago,
Okay.
um, not the great part of Chicago that everybody kind
Yeah.
of thinks of.
Okay.
I'm from the gutter of the gutter, man.
Okay.
And one of my earliest stories, and see, this is part of my healing journey, and I know I got the goosebumps, right? I couldn't have been no more than between 3 and 5.
Mm,
We're walking down the street. It's just me and my mother at the time, and this guy runs up to my mom, puts a gun to her head,
mm,
and all he wanted was her chain, but he takes her chain and he takes off. Make a longer story short, somebody came out, saw that, ran the guy down, and got my mom's chain. Actually, I think he might have took her purse as well and
mm,
brought it back to her. So after that incident, my mom was like, "We're getting the hell up out of here."
mm.
And she had a lot of awareness for that time, even being from the situation that she's in, and coming from a bigger family, and she's the only one of her family to leave. So
Mhm.
she's considered a black sheep, and she's just trying to figure it out herself.
Yeah.
When I recalled that story and I told her that, she was like, "You remember that?" I said, "I remember every detail of that." And she was like, "Wow, you couldn't have been no more than 3 to 5 years old when that happened." I said, "Yeah, yeah." And so you carry those emotions. People don't realize how much you store that up, and you carry those emotions with you into adulthood.
For sure, for sure.
Yeah,
100%, and while we're on that subject, man, shout out to the great moms out there,
absolutely.
because those, the moms, I think, are the real high performers that really don't get the same credit that other professions do, but the moms that out there that are, sacrifice, and they're determined, and they put everything in front of their life and their children and what they do, that's real power, man.
No, it really is. It really is. Now, you talked about a little bit about some of your martial arts
Mhm.
styles, plural. And I showed you a picture, I think a couple months ago, of Dan and Asanto and my teacher doing. They were at I think a Danzanru Jiu-Jitsu camp or something like that.
Yeah.
And so you have a huge Eskrima background. Tell us a little bit about that. That's one of
Yeah.
those arts that is a little bit eclectic that nobody really knows about.
Sure, sure. So, like, you look in the Filipino martial arts, you have, Eskrima. Some systems are Nice based and Kali. So I've studied a lot of Sarada Eskrima and and Kali systems, which are all under Filipino martial arts. So I think the broadest term people may know is Eskrima for it. And so this is Filipino stick fighting and knife fighting, and of course, they have sword and staff, and they have grappling.
Yeah,
They're complete systems that they have, and they're phenomenal systems. The interesting thing about those systems is they start you with a weapon first. So you start learning, and it's a transfer technology. So they put a knife in your hand or a stick in your hand, and the mechanics that you learn are transferred over to the other weapons, to the empty hands. They teach you how to move, teach you about timing, teach you about reactions and countering, and reading your opponent, bridging and closing the gap. They're great systems because when a stick is moving at 120 miles per hour, and you get your timing and your reactions and responses associated with that, or somebody's thrusting a knife at you and you learn how to relax, and you're like, that's no big deal. Then when you go to empty hands and things of that nature, you're a little desensitized to those types of pressures, and you can relax a lot more.
yeah. I've noticed that watching your videos, and if you guys, as you guys are looking onto this live stream, or you're looking back into this video, you really need to check out his videos. They're amazing. They're based in application. And what I've noticed in your videos is you do a lot of application based
Mm.
techniques. It's not just a lot of theory, as you know, a lot of martial artists do a lot of theory based
Sure.
techniques.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I have to explore and test things out, and not just believe it. I mean, in anything we do, I think that one of the most important things, whether it's martial arts or any kind of advice you're doing, you have to question it. You have to test it to see if you can make it work. Maybe somebody else can, but you can't make a certain technique or advice or strategy work. It's an important part of the discovery process. And for me, for the people that I work with, I have to make sure that what I'm teaching them is going to prepare them to have better odds of success. There's no such, you can't be perfect. Things work sometimes, maybe they work, maybe they don't, depends, even if different situations. So there's no one solution for it all. But at the end of the day, we have to have geometric shapes, we have to have timing, we have to have angles, distance, and the ability to read opponents and study the interaction between the individuals. That's what I think I really focus on a lot. Is it's a relationship. You're moving in relation to somebody else, and not just physically, but their emotions, their temperaments, their body mechanics, and what's happening. And so you're studying yourself in a relationship with somebody else. And the most important piece in that for the practical application is the ability to bring yourself down. It's the
That's right.
ability to slow down. It's the ability to calm down. It's the ability to relax under pressure, slow down your perception of time, expand your feeling awareness, read the opponent, read the room, read the situation, and then from there make a conscious choice or choose a response instead of just reacting out of a panic or a fear, or sometimes even a training response. You know what I mean? Because your ability to choose when you have those options. Um, and create time and space and pause and relax and bring the heart rate down, bring the respiration down as a skill, I think is the first most important thing, because the state of the operator is more important than the strategy or the tactics. So we start first with the state.
Well said. Now, would you refer that, or would you, speaking to someone about flow state, would you tell them this is how you start that process of getting into the flow state?
100%. I mean, so the first thing too, if you stop and think about one of the flow state is like this unicorn. It happens for athletes and it happens for like adventure athletes or it happens for monks on mountains and it's kind of reserved in these fairy tales of how people look at it, right? Like, oh, and who are the people who are studied? Oftentimes the research, you study the outliers. You study the guy who rides a 100-foot wave. You study the guy who jumps out of airplanes. You study the guy that races motorcycles or
Right.
cars or kicks down doors. So you can get good data that way, but that's an outlier. That how does that apply to a regular person?
That's right.
There's a big disconnect there. If you're not kicking down doors and hunting terrorists, then what they're experiencing does not really go across to you. It's not the same situation. So that's not an important delineation. And in the way that I've researched it and experienced it myself is that you look at flow state. There's three ways that most people enter the flow state. So number one is a flow or die situation, much like my story. You don't have another choice. It's either you're going to click in or you're going to die. So that flow state overrides everything. There's this survival mechanism inside you that you kick into that we were used to having more when we were in the jungle and tigers could have jumped out at any time and we were hunting and living in those environments. So you tap into that killer instinct and so it's flow or die. The next situation is isolation. You isolate yourself from the environment. You go to a beach, you go to a cave, go to a mountain, go to the forest, go to a temple, go to a church, go to your meditation room. You isolate and cut out all distractions and you take a journey inwards. And the third nowadays, especially that's becoming very popular in the Silicon Valley, is the usage of psychedelics.
Right.
But if you take a look at it, none of those three are sustainable because once you have a 10-foot wave, you need a 20-foot wave.
Right.
Isolation,
You don't get the same dopamine response.
you still don't get the same response. So now you have to
Yeah.
chase the next wave. What happens if there's no wave? What happens if there's no chaos?
Right.
Right? Then isolation. Well, unless you choose to be a monk in a mountain and that's your path, which is perfectly fine. How does that translate? You have to live amongst people. You have to come down from the mountain and be in the village amongst people. You have to be able to function in society with bills and with your children and with your interactions and your work and your job. So it's not sustainable to keep removing yourself from society. And then psychedelics, okay, you microdose, and then what happens? It becomes a macrodose. All of those things are external, and so you're using something outside of yourself or changing your situation in a way to get inside to something that already exists, that's always there, and it's your birthright. We're always in flow. We just have to take a look at it a little different and be like, what are the blocks? And work through the blocks that are in the way. So there's no such thing as entering the flow state because
Interesting. Okay.
I believe, and if you look at decoding it from thousands of years of masters working on it, it's like the way you train is the way you operate. So you train it to remove blocks because if it's like a hose, right? So if you look in a hose, there's kinks. There's kinks in a hose. So if there's kinks in a hose, then you have these kinks in the hose. The water can't flow through it. So unkink the hose and find out what are those kinks. Get rid of what's necessary. And there's three biggest blocks that we all go through. And these three biggest blocks, regardless of you take a look at professional athletes to, the high level military, to executives, to musicians, to whoever it is that's performing or regularly having to get into that situation. Sorry about that.
No
Um,
worries. Yeah.
the flow state is natural, but there's three blocks. And here's the three blocks: security, control, and approval. So number one,
Wow.
control, right? Control. Are you a control freak? Do you need to control things? If you're on a board and you're on a 100-foot wave and you're trying to control that, you're going to die. If you're going to try to control the next situation, you're going to die because you can't control people, places, and things. You can't control what's going to happen. So the first thing you have to do is you have to learn to understand, where does your need for control come from? And how do you
Mm.
step by step mechanically remove that? And what caused it? right? And normally what a need for control comes from is it comes from something has happened to you in the past that you're still angry about, and that you still have some blame and anger and resentment about, and you don't want it to happen again. So you need to control every single thing in every kind of situation. So you become a control freak, and if things are out of your control, you get tense. You can't relax, and and you cannot control fluid situations. Flow is fluid. You cannot have a fixed control mechanism to try to control people, places, or things. So that's the first thing, is to understand, are you in control? And by the way, these three things, I'm saying every one of us has it. So it's not like a one may be more important than the more prevalent than the other. Then the next is approval. You're an approval junkie. Do you require other people's approval? Do you need something outside of yourself to make you feel whole and total?
So that codependency thought process.
100%. Let's go back to
Yeah,
that wave. If you're on that wave and you're thinking, if I'm thinking on that wave, man, I wonder what Prince is going to think about me while I'm on that wave. What do you think is going to happen? I'm going to fall off that wave.
that's
I'm
right.
taking if I'm about to take a shot and the game is on the line and I'm worried about what the fans are going to think, I'm going to miss that shot. Somebody asked Michael Jordan once that, and it was one of the best things ever. Somebody asked him, he said, "Hey, are you ever afraid of taking that last shot?" And he looked at the reporter like, "What's wrong with you? Why would I be afraid of taking a shot? And why would I be afraid of a result that hasn't even happened yet?" He just looked at him like, "Are you like, what kind of a question is that?" But that goes to show you why Michael Jordan was Michael Jordan. He was never afraid to shoot, and he wanted the ball because he didn't care about the result. He didn't care about what people thought of him in that moment, so he could be free. And then the next one is security, right? Security. Are you a security cat, right? Security. So now the fear of what's going to happen, fear of the result, fear of what people think, fear of being hurt, fear of not being good enough. Some people have a fear of success. So if you have this need for control, this need for approval, and this need for security, I don't care what you try to do from the outside to override it. That's the journey that you have to take inside. So if we go back to my situation on the when I got attacked, because of that life and death situation, it overrode my need for approval, security, and control. So that's why I said that was the first time I was free from
Right.
myself and I met my true self because that situation overrode it. Now, if I went searching for that every single time to get back into it, it would not be very sustainable. Right? And so that's the first part that it starts in, in my as I'm pursuing my doctorate in Chinese energetic medicine, my area of focus is in the energetic psychology of how disease states are created and how peak states are created. And they all come back down to this because when we stop and take a look at it, all of us are faced with betrayal, rejection, and abandonment. We have some trauma that happens in our life, and there's a betrayal, there's a rejection and abandonment. That what that does is it makes us create walls around who we truly are. So the first wall that something happens to you, the first thing you do, here's your true self in your center. Then what you do is you build a wall around that, and that wall is of fear based, and that's where the ego gets created because it's created to protect you. Now you drift so far from your center that you're no longer in touch with who you are and why you're here, that a new wall is around that fear and ego. We call the ego fear wall. A second wall is around that, and that's doubt, self-doubt. And if you doubt yourself all the time, you really hate yourself. That's what most talk is, negative talk, because you're drifting so far from who you are. Now you keep drifting so far, a fourth wall is created, and that's your mask, your acquired personality, who you show to the world. So if you're operating from that acquired personality, you're so far away from your center, and in your center, the flow state is there. It's always there. The presence is always there. Peace is always there. When we stop and look at it, and peace is a choice inside of chaos. Happiness is a choice inside of struggle. Courage is a choice inside of fear. They're there. They exist at the exact same time. It's not something you have to do. Rather, it's something you have to let go of. It's a system of letting go, of hacking away at the unessentials to the truth of what's already there, as opposed to a system of acquisition, Well, the world we live in is a system of acquisition. Let's go get another degree. Let's go
Right.
get accolades. Let's get rewards. Let's get physical objects and homes and things to show how great we are. It's just let's keep acquiring, acquiring. So we're all masters of acquisition, but we need to become masters of becoming and coming to the center. If you look at it, it's kind of like David, Michelangelo and David. David was always inside the rock.
You're going deep, man.
David was
Ooh,
always inside the
yeah.
rock. David was not outside of the rock. The flow is not outside of you. It's already inside. You have to hack away at all the unessential things that are not necessary. And we'll get rid of that and you'll have flow. You'll have much more peace in your life. More importantly, you will be able to navigate life's circumstances with an ability to change and adapt. Because certainty in uncertain situations, fear is a big thing. What is big thing with fear is uncertainty. You're afraid of what's going to happen, right? You don't know what the result is. So if you're in a situation, you don't know what's going to happen. Your unshakable trust in yourself comes from knowing who you are and having an unshakable trust in your process and in your ability to adapt. So that's where it is. It's like in my ability to adapt and change because that's nature's way. Nature's way is one of change and transformation. Nothing is fixed. So that's the way through those things. But we can't get to be fluid. We can't get to flow until we understand what those blocks are, what our tendencies are, what our likes are, what our dislikes are, what our preferences are, what our attachments to victory and defeat are, people's thoughts and opinions are, to our reactive patterns and tendencies that we've adopted to survive in this world. Because to thrive, we have to go past those survival-based mechanisms that we adopted to survive. They
Mhm.
serve us till they don't serve us anymore. And so it's a process of hacking away. And everything I'm talking to you, by the way, is all internal kung fu and healing and performance. And I went through that with my teacher, these steps to be like, okay, well, who are you? And who are you? We all get asked that question. Who are you?
Right.
It's a
Right.
very difficult question to answer, but I can guarantee you every single person here listening can tell you who they're not. And who you're not your fears. You're not your emotions. You're not your needs for control. You're not your needs for approval. You're not your needs for security. You're not any of those things. You're not your fears. You're not your doubts. You're not any of those things. Remove that, and you're closer to who you are, and your choices will be much more conscious and much more accurate with regards to what is necessary in that moment, because you'll actually be able to see it for what it is versus what you think it is.
Man, you said a lot. So I usually refer to that state of mind via duality. I call that duality,
Mhm.
where you can't have a reference for the other side without first knowing the other side of the coin. Because there's two sides of the same coin.
Yes,
So
sir.
you can't first know an up without there being a down. You can't know darkness without it first being light.
Yep.
And so in order to go from to change the outside, the external, you have to go internal. They work hand in hand. So I think what most people try to do is they try to change all the external circumstances, situations, without wanting to do the work, which is the darkness in them. And they don't allow themselves to do that kind of work, and they allow themselves to heal. So nothing outside of them changes.
Well said, sir. That's
Yeah, it just
well said.
stays the same. Yeah. And I'm not saying I got it down, and I'm not saying that I'm perfect, because I'm not. It's just one of those things that I've come into awareness of, and it sounds like yourself, you're coming into an awareness of it. And it's through some of those dark moments, and
Mm.
if you don't allow yourself to go through those dark moments, you actually are really in-equipping yourself from those levels of growth that you need to take, or those steps that you need to take to get to the next level.
Yes, sir. 100%. In the Tai Chi philosophy, Tai Chi, or it's pronounced Tai Chi also, is you take a look at it, it's a system of opposites. So when you look at a system of opposites, people say there's yin yang, of course, right? And you look at
Right.
the Tai Chi symbol itself. Within yin, there's yang, and within yang, there's yin. But that's obvious. The hidden piece is the S in between the two sides, which is a shifting, elegant transition between the two. But it's only if we can accept the two sides can we shift and change from moment to moment with what's necessary. You look at like what you were saying. I love what you said about challenges and obstacles, and many times I think we lose sight of the nature of obstacles. I think when you
Right.
look back, let's say you had a crazy obstacle when you were going through that obstacle, 10 years later, you look back at that obstacle, like, oh my goodness, that obstacle changed my life in so many ways and all that kind of stuff. And you look back, you're like, wow, it was so great for my growth. Now, why can't we just have that while we're going through an obstacle? Will save us with a lot of suffering, you know? Because pain, we all go through pain, but suffering's
Yes, we do.
optional. Suffering's optional. Suffering's what we add to the situation, right? And what's the nature of obstacles? The nature of obstacles is they provide us with a value system. If I do not
Right.
have an obstacle in my life, I do not know what value that I truly have, what I can truly do, what I'm truly capable of. And the next piece of the nature of obstacle is for you to wake up to what your potential is, that you get to go through things because you're given those as gifts, because it's not about you. And it never was. Because once you go through it, you'll understand it, and somebody will be brought into your life that you can explain that to. It's not about us. And that frees us from that situation. I tell some of my students, and I say, okay, do you have a preference on a battery between the positive and the negative? And they're like, no. I'm like, all right. So same thing here. There's no preference between positive and negative. It just is.
Hmm.
Just like as athletes, you're an athlete. You win or you learn.
That's right.
But that's
You win or you learn. That's right.
right. So it's all in that perspective if we see it for what it is versus using it to beat ourselves down. And look at most of people's self-talk is negative self-talk.
Yeah.
So when they talk about flow states, it's an escape. I'm riding the wave as an escape. I'm going to go work out. It's an escape. I'm meditating. It's escape. Because what do you do with the other 24, 23 hours of the day?
That's right. So, what would you suggest? Just generally speaking, where do you start for attacking and breaking down those blockages?
Okay. The first thing is the 4 C's: criticize, complain, condemn, and comparison. Catch yourself doing those things. So, first thing, anybody listening can do this tomorrow or starting right now. Anytime you catch yourself criticizing, complaining, and condemning, say, tick, I caught you. Tick, I caught you. Tick. And you literally physically make a mark or put it in your phone, you make a mark. How many times did you catch yourself criticizing, complaining, and condemning? Start right there. And it's very functional because then at the end of the day, you should see a whole bunch of tick marks or you weren't aware. And then slowly what you start to bring into your consciousness is you start to realize that that's how you give your power away. You give your life force away because it's casting a spell. That's what the original casting a spell was. Wasn't like dropping, the original cursing was not dropping an F-bomb here and there. It was criticizing, complaining, and condemning and sending that negative energy out. And that's where it kind of started. And so you can choose and pause. So that's one thing, you start doing that. The next thing is introduce tactical pauses. It's a very simple thing that you can try. Try it for 5 days and do it full heartedly. And if it doesn't work, you can call my BS. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
So I challenge you, right? All right, you wake up in the morning, there's a transition between the night and the day. That's the first pause. In that pause, what is your morning routine? What do you do to set yourself up? What do you do to set yourself up for the day to have that transition? Do you break a sweat? Do you do some breathing exercises? Do you do some meditation? Do you do some prayer? Do you do some creative learning? Do you eat healthy in the morning? If you do you have proper water intake at that time? Do you take a cold shower? What do you do? What's your process to change and transform your state? So you introduce the first pause. Then at night, you introduce another pause. And that pause is, now you ask yourself 3 questions. You look back upon your day and you ask yourself, well, what did I do well? What did I learn? And what am I going to do about it? So now you have these 2 bookends and the 2 transitional points between night and day and night. Then you go into your phone and you set 5 alarms for 3 minutes. It's 15 minutes. 5 alarms. And when those 5 alarms go off, so maybe one at 10 a.m. and one just after lunch, one around 3, 4, one just before dinner and one after dinner. 3 minutes. Remove yourself from the environment and go and just come back into your breathing. Trace the breath in, trace the breath out, but not just your breathing. Then feel your body whole and total. Feel the pull of gravity pulling you down. Feel the weight of your body and just focus on that. And just by doing that, what you've done is you've introduced tactical still points in your day, tactical pauses in your day for you to return to center. Because most of the time we're up in our heads and we are not in the present moment. We are in the future, worried about something, or in the past, or we're complaining, criticizing, and condemning. And so now you have a functional way to measure it. The next pause that you want to introduce is as Viktor Frankl said, the still point between stimulus and response. That's where magic happens. That's where the result is. So in your conversations with people, somebody says something to you, pause, take in a breath, step back, expand your awareness around. And by expand your awareness, I mean, don't just look at them, feel all around you. And then ask yourself if you're going to say the next thing from security, control, and approval. And if you are, don't say
Wow,
that.
I like that.
Don't say that. And then choose a response. If you just did that, your whole life will change in a functional, measurable way. Because what you've done is you've introduced pauses and breakpoints in your day between how you're used to doing things, the loop that you run, the patterns, the acquired personality, how you make your choices. And what you've done now is you've introduced conscious still points into your day to which you can transition your day. You can transition conversations. You can transition between day and night, and in the night and day. And that becomes a way that you can start living the S curve or the Taiji in your life. And the masters of the pauses, they're the ones that in that pause, because if you take a look at spirituality, it's not found on a yoga mat. It's not found doing a Taiji practice. It's not found necessarily in meditation. You can have awakenings. But the functional piece, those are practice. Those are very important practice. But the practicality of it is found that in your space between your thoughts. It's found in the space between your choices, especially under pressure. When you choose to do something you would not have done before as a conscious choice, now that's spiritual growth.
Wow. So you touched on it lightly. Master your center. Now, are these the steps? And that's kind of what you specialize in, and is mastering your center. Are these the steps that you need to take to start that process of awareness?
100%. This is just what I laid out.
Yep.
Just do that. It's that simple. Because you're not going to find it in a book. You're not going to find it on a podcast. You may get ideas. You're not going to. See, this is the thing, though. What happens now, we have so much information at our fingertips. So we live in one of the greatest generations ever that we have access to podcasts and to books and audiobooks and so much information that we just seek and gather information, but we're not looking at who is taking in the information. So for example, there's the who, how, what. So when you look at martial arts in the beginning, somebody's learning, they're like, okay, what shape am I making? Then one step further, you're like, okay, well, how am I making this shape? Well, ultimately, it's who is making the shape. And once you know who is making your choices, your whole game is going to change. Everything is going to change because you start to understand, are you making your choices from your past, which is most of the time what happens? Are you making your choices from fear, from control, from approval? Because just that simple thing. And if you choose outside of those patterns, you will see something different happen. If you don't choose outside of those patterns, you will repeat the past and then keep trying harder and not get anywhere and waste precious life force and time.
Well, man, that is phenomenal. And you're right. There's a lot of things a lot of nuggets that you put out there that you're not going to find in a book. And like yourself, I'm working on my doctorate. And
Nice.
one of the things that I'm learning in my program is they call it Bloom's taxonomy. Basically,
Okay.
is the pyramid of learning.
Mm.
And the way we are expected to learn is we're expected to gather a bunch of information, a bunch of knowledge.
Okay.
But knowledge is not comprehension, or the reading is not comprehension. It's not enough just to have a bunch, like as you say, a bunch of knowledge at your fingertips. That does nothing. That doesn't help you at all. And so you have to be able to comprehend that knowledge.
Mhm.
And you have to be able to take that, from that step is to take that knowledge and apply it.
Yes.
And as you work your way up the pyramid into mastery, now you got to take that all of that information and take it right back down to the very beginning and be able to teach it at the level that people are able to comprehend it.
Yes.
And you,
Yeah.
and you got to disseminate that information in the best way, that on all levels. That's true mastery of information.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Absolutely. My teacher always says the path is from knowledge to wisdom to understanding. So knowledge is information. Wisdom is time with that information. And understanding becomes a knowing without knowing, where it's yours.
That's right.
And then once it's yours, like you said earlier, it's mastery. Now you can disseminate it back to the receiver the way the receiver needs to hear it and meet them at their level of what they need to move forward.
Yeah. Now, how long have you been training in Tai Chi?
Same since I started street fighting. So since I think it's been 2006.
Okay. A lot of people don't understand what Tai Chi is. They
Yes.
think it's a bunch of slow, really methodical movement.
Mm.
Admittedly, so even with my martial arts background, I can't really speak to it. I don't know a whole lot about Tai Chi specifically, but I do know that its base is in practical application. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, absolutely. So first of all, what is the number one enemy? The number one enemy we all face is stress and tension. The number one killer, heart disease, started from what? You look at like brain function, many diseases. The whole cause of them all is strokes, it's stress, it's tension, and an inability to deal with stress and tension. So tension is enemy number one. So what the first part with Tai Chi is you learn to relax down because tension rises up, right? You get tensed up, your muscles get tensed up, the tension flows upwards, your um, heart rate speeds up, your respiration speeds up, every single thing speeds up. And in these things, we have to have a method to relax down and relax down with gravity because gravity is always pulling us down. So that's the first thing is that alignment and to learn and to feel like right now we're sitting here. Can Are we aware of gravity? People, if you're listening, are you aware that gravity is constantly pulling you down? And there's this force that's always pulling you down. If you want to come to center, that's the fastest way. It's like gravity's always pulling me down. There's only one way I'm going, and it's down. But we lose track of the greatest force acting on us all the time. So
Well,
that right? So relaxation flows down. So relaxation is the key to many things, but relaxation's understanding is relaxation is not go home and Netflix and chill, relaxation is relaxed and ready to respond,
a
and
high
it's
state of awareness.
a
Yeah.
high state of awareness is true relaxation. And so the other piece that happens is so from a health perspective, your ability to do that is very important to teach yourself to relax, teach the muscles to relax, teach the mind to relax, teach the tissues to relax, teach the emotions to relax. So relax becomes the ability to relax down becomes one of the greatest tools that we can have. Because once you relax down, boom, now you can get out of your head into your body, into the ground, and you can expand your awareness out. Your feeling awareness, your gut that tells you what's up. Right? We become too up in our heads instead of feeling what's happening. We how many times when somebody says something to you, do you react to the words they say versus feeling the emotion behind it? Or getting one step further and saying, what's the story behind that? And you'd have different interactions with people if you could feel and sense that, which great therapists and psychologists and coaches know that. They can see body language. They can see, oh man, so you ask a student, how you doing? And they're like, I'm fine. Like, tell me, there's more behind that. And you can dig deeper to that. And so that's the next piece. And then the next thing is the ability to connect to something greater than yourself. You connect to a higher power, you connect to a higher purpose, a higher mission. How often do we lose sight of that? So if you can be, so we call it heaven, man, earth, right? So it's
Hmm.
you're relaxing down into the earth. You're connecting up to something greater, and you're expanding out your awareness in your interaction. And when you can find all three of those, the center of all, that's the true alignment of the center. And the center of man is the body, breath, and mind. If you can align the body, stack the bones, relax the muscles in alignment with gravity flowing down. If you can align the breath, find the center of the breath, which is in between the inhale and the exhale and the inhale, but it's a smooth transition. And you're aware of the transition like a wave. The breath is like a wave coming in and coming out. You can feel the subtle transitions, and you can get to the center of the mind, which is not in the future or the past, but be here right now. So if you can be here right now, you're aware of the breath fluctuating like a wave, and your body, you know how to stack and align it and relax the muscles. That's the center of man. And then if you're in the center of your higher purpose, your calling, why you're here, while you're feeling earth pulling you down, and you expand your awareness out, that changes your whole perspective of what is happening. And that's the true purpose of Tai Chi, of why you move so slowly. The reason you're moving so slowly is so you can feel and experience those things. So I can feel my tissues expanding. I can feel the blood flowing. I can feel my heart pumping. I can feel what my liver is doing. I can feel my lungs expanding from inside. Outside, I can feel, oh, the birds are behind me. Over in front of me, there's something here. The wall behind me. Even if we're sitting here right now, and I said, Prince, feel the wall behind you. Instantly, you can feel the wall behind you.
That's true. Yeah.
But how many times do we walk through our days and not feel the wall behind us? We only feel what's in front of us. So even right now, people listening, feel the wall behind you, to the left of you, to the right of you, above, the ceiling above you, and the ground below you. That's your awareness 360 degrees. So right now, that changed your whole perception of what's happening. The next thing is, while you're sitting here, feel your whole weight of the body. Feel the whole space your body takes up and its weight. And now you'll feel gravity pulling you down. And it's really such a simple but profound thing, but that's why you move so slowly in the forms, because taiji is not about the external motion. It's about what you fill the cup with, and that's filling it with your awareness. That's what's called an internal martial art. It's filling it with the life force energy. It's filling it with your spirit, which is the thoughts of the mind and the feelings of the heart, or the yi, the intention. And how does you interact with gravity, of course, the environment around you and people around you. And it becomes a real study of that. And it's a study of your tensions and where you hold your tensions and your fears and what gets in your way. And how do you transform yin and yang, which is the change when everything goes away. So energy can flow away from you or flow into you, right? But as
Right.
it flows away from you, there's a point and there's a transition and it flows back in. Then there's a transition and it flows back out. So you learn to study the elegant transition. Energy can rise or it can fall. It can expand or it can contract. Once you understand that in all aspects of life. And you learn to study the system of opposites, but what binds them is the transitional points.
Beautifully said. Very, very well said. I love that. Man, it makes me want to go join a Tai Chi class now, man. I'm being funny, but I've actually have been interested in the past, but I'm being very serious because there is that level of I guess I didn't have a answer or an understanding of it, but there is something that I felt like I was seeking, even in my martial arts journey, that I'm missing, and that internal, as you refer to, that internal power, so to
Yes.
speak. If you know what I'm saying.
100%. And then so I call it the flow engine. Because that is, if we want to study flow, that's where we study it. It's the ancient technology for flow that you can only find by going inside, right? And when we go back to like, when oftentimes, if we look at today's society, we're all suffering from an energy crisis and a time crisis. There's never enough time and never enough energy to be present at home or to perform at work. Everybody's dealing with that. So they're doing many different things to be more productive, but in managing their time. But how do they increase their energy? You can do many different types of amazing breath work and meditative practices, from yoga to Tai Chi to the Wim Hof method. There's so many amazing methods that are out there. What I suggest you also take a look at is, where do you waste your energy, and plug the holes. You can gain as much energy as you want, but if you haven't plugged the holes, it's just going back out. So
So
those
energy leak.
the energy leaks. So start plugging the holes. And the number one thing that you start plugging the holes is, it's not necessary to react. Stop reacting to people, places, and things. Stop reacting, because you react, boom, you send it away. Stop doing things from security, control, approval. Those are holes. Boom, now you keep that energy. You will start to have an energy surplus if you just stop giving the power away. Stop criticizing, complaining, and condemning, and you will gain back your life force. You will have much more energy. You'll have much more clarity. You'll have much more awareness. Then you'll be much more functional with your usage of time.
Amazing. So we've been on here for about a little over an hour now.
Well, we've been
And
flowing. I didn't even look at the time.
hey,
So
man, we have been flowing, and you know what? We could probably talk all day. I have so many questions I do want to ask you, but for the purpose of us speaking of time, let's shift gears. Let's talk about the TEDx. You've done a TEDx before,
yes, yes.
and if you guys haven't seen it, you need to tap in and you need to see it. He's very elegant in his speech, and he brings it, and he closed it out perfectly. And I don't want to give it justice. I can't give it justice, so I'm gonna let you talk on it a little bit more.
Oh, so yeah, that was the first talk I'd ever given. Was TEDx Sacramento 12 years ago, in the last Dragon year we were in, and it was called "How to Quiet the Mind in 5 Minutes a Day" was the name of the talk. And it was a great honor and a great pleasure to be able to share some of those ideas with people. And I really enjoyed myself, and I'm extremely humbled and very honored that to be working with you, and you invited me to come on for TEDx San Luis Obispo coming up here on April 14th.
Man, we're glad to have you. Giving a little bit of a backstory. I wanted to speak on my own TEDx, and I was applying everywhere to get on these platforms. That would have been the next progression in my career, and it wasn't working out the way I wanted it to work out.
Hmm.
So in my bright mind, I was like, well, let me go ahead and put on my own event.
I love it.
And so one of the things that, if you don't know anything about me, I do not like to hear no. There's always an answer to the question. There's always a solution to the problem.
Sir.
So you just have to go find the solution. So I found my own solution. So I applied for the TEDx event, or applied for to have my own TEDx event here in San Luis Obispo. Make a longer story short, got the license, and now I'm looking at the situation, criticizing, as you said, the four steps, and I'm thinking to myself, I am way in over my head right now. I don't even know where to begin. And this was just a few short months ago, and I was sitting outside, and I just probably unconsciously, not even really thinking about it, I was doing exactly what you were doing. I was just allowing myself to be, and I was letting go, and I was just sitting outside, and I was like, well, the answer will come to me. It'll come together the way it's going to come together. And so my neighbor was walking by, my next door neighbor. I've known her for a number of years, but we probably didn't say more than 4 or 5 words to each other. Always cordial, but nothing that we ever really had an extended conversation about. But I did know that she was an event planner. So I said, Amanda, aren't you an event planner? She's actually a wedding planner, one of the best in the Central Coast, by the way. Amanda, if you see this. And so she was like, yeah, I'm an event planner. She's like, what do you need? I said, listen, I have this TEDx event that I'm the license holder of, and I'm trying to put it on. I don't even know where to begin. Can you help me? She was absolutely on board with all of it. And this thing has that which started selfishly has now taken on a life of its own, and things are just kind of falling in place. and I'm looking at it more from a bigger point of view versus all about me, and now me helping others, and how I can help others by serving them to get their message across. And that's the backstory. And you were part of that. You were one of the first people I was like, man, I need to have him on there. And we had been talking back and forth, probably, via text about being on the podcast and stuff.
That's
And
right.
I was like, man, I wonder if he'll just do the TEDx talk for me. And look, everything just kind of fell into place.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I'm glad you reached out and we were able to make it work.
Yeah, I know you have aspirations of moving on and getting on the TED platform. And but as of right now, talk a little bit about some of your ideas about what you're going to bring here in April.
Well, I think, our topic is determination, right? Is the theme of it. And many times with regards to determination, we don't look at who is involved in the process. We jump to what we're going to do, how we're going to do it, but we don't take time to see who is doing it. Determination to me is a definiteness of purpose, and
Absolutely.
determination is a result of who you are. Who you are determines how you will execute what you do. So many times we focus on what we're going to do or how we're going to do it, but we don't really take a look at who is involved in the process. Because if we don't truly understand who we are and why we're doing something, you could be as determined as you want, but you're not on the right channel. How many times have we tried something and tried something and tried something, given it our best, but it just didn't work out? Well, maybe you're not on the right channel. And I think that's one of the most important things is discover, am I on the right channel? Because you have a volume button and you have a tuning button or tuning dial. And many times we're like, get after it. Let's go. Let's get more discipline. Let's work harder. Maybe that's not your destiny. And how do we really try to figure that out of why we're here? And how we have to do that. We have to find out what is driving us. Are you being determined to do something because you're running away from something? Are you being determined to do something because you're running towards something? What's shaping it out? Like, for example, my dad wasn't around. So I could say I'm determined to be a good dad to my kids. So I can say, wow, I'm going to be there for my kids. I'm going to do everything for my kids because my dad wasn't around. So on paper, that sounds good. But why am I not being there for my kids because they're my kids and they deserve it, as opposed to me being a good dad to them because my dad wasn't there? It's just a question to ask, because the energy and the intention behind it changes. And then they know. They know, they can feel it. And so that's the thing. There's a knowing that we have to get to. We have to understand destiny. We have to understand fate. We have to understand why we're here. We have to unravel these things. We have to understand the nature of obstacles, because that's the thing. Because you look, is a mom determined to be a good mom? No, she just does it. It's a result. Is a soldier determined to jump on a grenade and save his teammate's life? No, he just does it. Is an athlete determined to win? No, they just do it. Do you create something amazing? Are you determined to create something new, or do you just do it? And how do we do it? How do we bring it? Because when it's in the face and the nature of obstacles, how do you get to the point that you invite the obstacle? You invite it in and say, come on, man. And you bring your best. And I invite it as a guest of my experience instead of trying to fight it or trying to flight or run from it or freezing or submitting to it. How do I embrace it into the Tao and bring it in? How do I accept it? How do I invite that experience? And what are the steps that I can do so that I can walk away right here, right now? Because enlightenment is instantaneous, because you have to just lighten the load.
Hmm.
And when you do that, you start to realize or look through your real eyes as to what is actually happening. And when you understand what is actually happening, you can take responses or choose actions that are co-measured to what is actually happening versus what we think is happening. Because many times what we think is happening is, or all the time, what we think is happening is not the same as what's actually happening. Because what we think is happening is what's actually happening, plus our own charges, our own personal stuff. Get rid of that. Rid of the kinks in the hose of security control approval. See things for what they are. And once you do that, now your actions will be co-measurate to what's actually happening. And now we start to take a look at determination a little differently. Because if you're not have a definiteness of purpose, and the definiteness of purpose cannot be driven from your trauma. It cannot be driven from trying to get away from something. It cannot be driven by trying to achieve something. There has to be something higher. Otherwise, it's not really your mission here on this rock racing around the sun. Because if as long as it's about you, missing the boat. So,
Man, hey, don't give it away. Don't give it all away right now. Hey, we got to save some for the show.
so, so that's those are some of my thoughts as to what's happening.
No, man, that's all amazing stuff. Hey, man, well, I just want to say uh, thank you for coming on to the show. We're going to have to do this again.
For sure.
Uh, you have so many levels to you. So the world needs to hear this, man. Whether I'm on yours or you on mine, we need to make sure that we're staying connected and we're putting the message out there, man. Because this was an amazing. We covered a lot of amazing topics today.
No, thank you. I'm really humbled and honored to have you, and I really enjoy speaking with you as always.
Yeah, man. Hey, well, for that, thank you guys for tuning in. For those that haven't tuned in, I'm sure you guys are gonna watch back on this episode. There are some nuggets in here, so listen all the way through. So thank you for tuning in. I am the real Prince Williams.
Thank you, sir.